This video is a double ATB build, and this is pretty much everything we can do to a long nose ATB, and then the one with the little blue label on it, everything we can do with a long nose ATB and a bit extra. That is a peg casing of ours, number 1306, and that is having an ATB and a heavy duty front cut crown wheel and pinion. This one with the blue label, this is one of our big bearing conversions where we machine out the nose of the diff and we put a much bigger bearing in there, and we'll show you those. But basically, if you want an ATB and you want as strong as you can get, then it's that one. And if you want as strong as you can get without the extra on the front of the big bearing conversion, you go for this one. And again, that's a colleted case, and this is a colleted case. Now I'll show you the difference on the big bearing. Here is the nose of the standard peg casing. This is where the seal fits, and then at the bottom here you've got the tail bearing, which we're going to knock out, and we've got to clean these casings up. This one here is an awful lot bigger. As you can see, it's been bored out down here a lot bigger, and we put a much bigger bearing in there, which we'll show you. And over here we have the pile of bits that are going to be going into these two builds. We've got the 3.5 rear, the 3.5 front. We've got some special super flanges, Timken bearings, and also underneath this lot we have the big bearing. So here we have the standard metric Land Rover long nose tail bearing 539707, and next to it on this side we have the much bigger bearing, which we're putting in the conversion that we do for the big bearing, and there is a massive difference in size. This is going in the rear only because it's an expensive conversion, but we're putting it in there because it's an extremely powerful engine that's going in there. So we will show you the builds of both. You'll notice here we're using an NTN. We normally always use Timken, but that bearing in NTN is £148 plus VAT, so it's sort of, we move across to NTN, which is still a premier bearing, but my god, there's a size difference there. If I just lift that up so you can see, there's the rollers on that one, and that's a lot bigger. So we're going to clean up the casings. The other thing we're going to do is, on the casings, the carrier caps have these silly little pins. That one's actually bent already. These either fall out, bend, or snap off. They're a cost cutting exercise. We'll cut that one off, see what this one's like. Yeah, that one's okay, but it's all going to get cut off. Now you'll notice these are colleted casings. On all of our big bearing conversions we use the very best casing we can, which is the colleted one. This basically stops it shuffling. Shuffling is where it's bolted to the carrier, but because there's a bolt through here and there's clearance, it can actually do this, and that's why they put the collets in, because it was snapping these pins even easier. But instead of going back to the old-fashioned locking dog that we're going to, they put the collets in. So for us, using a colleted casing and then putting one of our Domex carrier cap conversions on, so that's going to get welded onto there, and these little dog legs will be welded into there from the underneath, so they're nice and smooth, and then the whole lot linished, and you'll see that later. You get Domex 700MC colleted case with our Domex carrier cap conversion on there, and that is the strongest peg case we can build with the big bearing conversion as well. So enough rambling. We're going to clean the casings up and we're going to build both. I'm not going to show you a detailed build, but on the ATBs we use special bolts. Which bolt to use is a pub argument time, but if you use an Allen bolt, I can get it in focus, that is, let's try again, right, Allen bolt, that has a very small surface area that bites on the ATB, and these have a habit of coming loose. They're very strong because they're 12.9 grade, but the actual surface area to clamp is very poor, so we don't use those. For those diff builders that decide not to reuse a standard bolt, which we never ever do, we never reuse any standard bolts, their choice would be this one, FTC 5150 12.9 grade flanged headed bolt with serrations. These are great bolts. The only problem with this is that those serrations don't bite into an ATB. Because of the fact the ATB is a heat treated center, the metal is incredibly hard and these just don't bite into it. So again, these probably will come loose and or shear. If they come loose, they can actually start lathing the inside of your diff, which is not a great idea. So we don't use those. What we use are these. These are a very special imperial bolt that we get in from Germany, and on here is what's called a Nordlock NLX, and this combination works really well. It's a really strong bolt, and the Nordlocks with the double serrations on each side and the cam locking system middle, these are actually made out of a tougher metal than the FTC 5150, so these actually do really dig into the ATB and lock solid. And these, with locking paste, Nordlocks and these bolts, are the best combination we've had for holding an ATB together. Whether it be an Ashcroft or a Quaife, they both suffer the same problem of bolts shaking their way loose over use. So that's what's going into both of these builds. So while the casings are getting cleaned up, I've got to Domex 2 pairs of these. One for each set of those. Little note here for those that don't know, these are not only matched to the casings, they're matched to which side they go on. You start mixing and matching these and you will have a problem. So we always make sure we mark them as to which side needs to go back on to which side. Just a small point, but it's very important. Dry flange wise, we use these where we can. These are the very late Puma ones. They are much more expensive than the square ones. This square one here you'll see has got our super flange fitted, which we'll show you. This one will have a super flange fitted. You'll notice that this one is taller than that one, and this one means we don't have to have the silly collar on here, which is just another thing that is good to throw in the dustbin. The reason a lot of people build diffs with these on is these are really cheap. These are more expensive. But there are 2 reasons we use these, 3 reasons. 1, we get rid of the spacer that sits here. 2, this OD is bigger than our super flange OD, so in actual fact, face on, our round flange protects the super flange. And thirdly, it's just a better unit off-road, because I can't think of any reason you'd want something square spinning at high speed off-road and it finds something and hits it. Round hitting something off-road is a lot more chance you'll get away with it. So we use these where we can. We use these, as you can see here, on 4-spline diffs where we have no choice, because they never made that in a 4-spline unit. So that's the last part of the equation, and we'll have a super flange pressed on. There is also the question of the pinion bolt. This is the standard pinion bolt used by Land Rover, flanged head. The only problem with it, it's a very soft bolt. It's not very strong at all. Now bear in mind, this is holding the dry flange onto the end of your pinion, and we see these where the prop shaft has maybe got a sticky UJ or a sticky slider, and it actually snaps this in half. You've then got 2 problems. One is you've got prop shaft flailing about because it's not connected anymore. More importantly, you've also got a lump of this stuck in the end of a 12.9 grade pinion. 250 quid's worth probably in this case, and getting that stuck out of a pinion is next to impossible. So we use these, which is a far heavier duty grade. This is a 10.9 grade. It's got a bigger flange bolt on it, it's a stronger bolt, and we use these. We don't go up to 12.9. If you do your homework, you'll find that 12.9 bolts, although they're stronger than this, they become a little bit more brittle. So we compromise, we use this, which is a lot stronger than that, but not as strong as a 12.9. And again, we would never ever put an Allen bolt in the end, because this surface area that's biting is what's key here in holding all this lot in place. Little point makes a lot of difference when they all add up together. Now you'll notice where we're welding these in, there's a 3/4 of a millimeter drop, and that's so when I weld them up, it's flush. I'll show you in a second. And there they are, welded up, waiting to cool down and be cleaned up. So just weld that one. So they're welded, but they look nasty, so they now need tidying up a little bit. So 2 down, all shaped and linished, 2 to go.
course it is.
So the big bearing is right in there. We've got the seal at the front here, and we've got our little adapter ring allowing us to use the standard seal. I'm not going to go through how the big bearing conversion works. There is video on that, but that is all in there, ready for the pinion to come through and be fitted finally. So this is the rear big bearing ATB Domex carrier cap conversion. We put our own locking ears on here. We don't use the standard Land Rover ones. They're made of cottage cheese, all TIG welded on. We've got heavy duty carrier bolts with Nordlock washers. We've got these bolts we use because the ATB is quite thick and we're putting Nordlocks on, so we need an extra long bolt. So yeah, they stick through a little bit more than we'd like, but it doesn't really matter. But that is a cracking diff, and that is pretty much everything we can do to an ATB, including big bearing in it. And that is the blueprint. Now this is a very special crown wheel. We're going to be using more of these. I'm not going to tell you much about it now, except they're beautiful, but we will be doing a video on these crown wheels very shortly and telling you all about them. But that is a beautiful diff, dead quiet and super strong. The video so far has been of basically everything we can possibly do to make the strongest possible ATB that money can buy. This is the next step down. This is exactly the same spec, but with two changes. The first change is it doesn't have a big bearing in the pinion tail bearing, and also the crown wheel, as you can see here, another beautiful blue check. This is a reverse cut crown wheel and pinion. There is a video all about reverse cut crown wheel and pinions, but in simple terms, your front diff rotates in the opposite direction to your rear diff, which means that when you look at the drive side and the coast side, on a front diff, normally it has a rear cut crown wheel and pinion, which means when you're driving forwards, it's actually driving on the weakest part of the gear set. By rotating the crown wheel and pinion as though you're putting it in a mirror, so if you compare this with the earlier video, you'll see that the crown wheel is all facing the opposite direction. So when you put this in a front diff, this drives on the strongest side of the crown wheel, called the drive side, not the coast side, which it would be if you put a rear in the front. And yes, you might need an aspirin. Another beautiful crown wheel and pinion, another beautiful blue check. Again, another colleted, pegged, Domex carrier cap converted casing. Nordlocks, heavy duty carrier caps, our own locking ears, Ashcroft ATB, and again the high grade Imperial with Nordlocks NLX washers, and this is going in the front. So this is the second one of a pair of diffs for a very high-end spec, high powered Land Rover. That's everything we can do to an ATB. Two different versions, one standard, one big bearing. Thanks for watching, bye for now. That was basically everything we can throw at an ATB long nose casing, absolutely everything. This is the next step down, which is everything excluding the big bearing conversion. Now this one, if you look at the crown wheel, this is a front cut, rear front cut